So then you're sitting on the side of the road, and then you think, I read the book on compassion. Damn. And the moment you begin to think about what you have to do, something very natural happens. You begin to think about what you were thinking about. You begin to pay attention to how you're reacting. You begin to notice how you're feeling. And that concept in neuroscience is called metacognition. We can observe who we're being. And because we can observe who we're being, it means we could modify our behaviors to do a better job in life. So now the frontal lobe is the seat of your awareness. It's the home of the you and the me. And as you begin to think about who you no longer want to be, the frontal lobe acts like a volume control. And it begins to lower the volume in the circuits in your brain that are connected to the old self. And as it begins to silence those circuits that are connected to the old level of mind, that level of mind no longer fires, and you're observing it instead of participating in it. And as you begin to silence those circuits, nerve cells that no longer fire together no longer wire together. And you begin to biologically break down the circuits in your brain that are connected to the old self and to the old mind. Now, as you're sitting on the side of the road, you think, what piece of knowledge could I apply in this situation from what I learned in the book? And as you begin to plan your actions, and you begin to think about a new way of being, and you begin to put yourself into the equation, your brain naturally begins to fire in new sequences and new patterns and new combinations. And whenever you make your brain work differently, you're changing your mind, because mind is the brain in action. And as the brain begins to fire in new ways and you produce a new level of mind, nerve cells that fire together wire together, and you begin to install the neurological hardware ahead of the actual experience. And now you have circuits in place to use when you get into that dinner. So now, as you ask yourself, what is compassion? And you begin to remember all these different things that you learned in the book, the frontal lobe, like a great symphony leader, begins to synchronize these circuits. And when it begins to produce a certain level of coherence, a certain level of mind, your brain naturally creates a hologram or an image. And that image then becomes the internal representation of what you are going to use when you walk into that dinner. We would call that intention. Now, there's a very, very unique shuffle that kind of goes on microscopically between different circuits in your brain. You're trying to fire this new thought called compassion. But remember, you fired and wired all these other circuits based on the last 10 years. So as you're beginning to fire this new thought, all these other thoughts are saying, you hate your mother-in-law, you don't want to go to that dinner, why don't you start tomorrow? This isn't a good time to do this. But if you persist with a certain amount of amplitude, and you put your attention behind that thought, sooner or later, that thought will be the strongest and loudest voice in your head. Now, the moment that becomes the loudest voice in your head, the brain has to seal that circuit more permanently. So when the action potential is firing down the neuron from the presynaptic cleft to the postsynaptic cleft, there's a glue that seals the circuit called neural growth factor, and it travels in the opposite direction. But there's only a certain amount of that neural growth factor to go around. So it starts to steal the glue from the neighboring circuits. And when that happens, there goes your memory of your mother-in-law hurting your feelings 10 years ago. There goes the thought that you hate her. There goes the impatience. There goes the intolerance. And the only signal now that's traveling to that neuron is called compassion. Now, every place where one neuron connects with another neuron is a memory. When this happens, you begin to biologically and neurologically prune away the old memory of the old self. And this is the science of changing your mind. If you want to see what it looks like in real time, let's try that again. You want to see what it looks like in real time, unhooking from the old self, reconnecting to the new self. This can happen in moments. Now, get back on the road, you make your U-turn, you're heading to the dinner, you're reminding yourself who you no longer want to be, silencing those circuits in the brain. You begin to think about who you do want to be based on the knowledge you've learned, and you're priming your brain ahead of the actual experience. You walk into the dinner and you get your behaviors to match your intentions. You get your actions equal to your thoughts. You get your mind and body working together, and you do exactly what the book says. The moment that happens, all of a sudden, you feel compassion. Now, the moment your heart begins to open and you feel compassion, you are teaching your body emotionally to understand what your mind intellectually understood. You see, knowledge is for the mind, but experience is for the body. And when we begin to experience compassion, now we are embodying knowledge. The word is becoming flesh, and the limbic brain makes a new batch of peptides that signals the body, and you begin to literally change your genetic expression because there's new information coming to the gene. And epigenetically, we signal genes from the environment. And you're changing the fabric of you because you're instructing your body chemically to understand what your mind has intellectually and philosophically understood. But it's not enough to do it once. You can't forgive your mother-in-law one time and expect to be on the stained glass windows in church. You got to be able to repeat the experience. You got to be able to do it over and over again. You have to do it so many times that you no longer have to think about it. And when you do it over and over again, you neurochemically condition the body to memorize compassion as well as the conscious mind. And when that happens, when the mind and body are working together, or the body knows as well as the mind, you activate that third brain called the cerebellum, the seat of your subconscious mind. You've practiced it so many times that you know how, but you don't know how you know how. It's automatic. It's second nature. It's easy. It's a habit. It's a skill. It's an automatic behavior. And when you get to this level of memorizing an internal chemical order, a level of innate now, it's so innate in you that it's who you are. When you get to that point where no person, no thing, no experience can remove you from it, because you have sustained this level of coherence, now you're in a state of being. And so the way we transform the world is we transform ourselves. And when we're in that state of being, we give people permission to do the same. Thanks for listening.